Alright, Bloodborne can be a quite challenging game, but if you don't feel like running the gauntlet, there is, ironically, a hunter tool that will fit you like a glove. Namely, one of the executioner variety. If you want to expand your arsenal, this glove might be the safest and cleanest approach. Perhaps not as powerful as a Call Beyond, but much more efficient as you require only 3 Quicksilver bullets per shot. Meaning that a set of blood bullets is already enough, and it makes the attack highly spammable as well. Very handy indeed. So, what would it be like going through the game using the executioner gloves as your only form of attack? Well, as it turned out, normally I tend to do challenge runs, where the game will put up even more of a fight than normally, but this turned out to be like getting handled with kids' gloves. Because using this weapon is like putting the game on easy mode. As intimidating as the beasts and other worldly monstrosities might be, we are ruling with an iron fist in a velvet glove. Well, not literally velvet, so let me tell you how my character here broke the game and how the executioner gloves led her to victory. Alright, I wanted to say the gloves are off, but then we wouldn't be able to attack. But unfortunately, you do start the game that way, since we cannot get our hands on and inside of the gloves until Cainhurst. However, if we use a handy tool like Save Editor, it will be glove at first sight. And it is instantly clear that we won't exactly need to knuckle down with an attack this effective. Although, hold on a second, get a grip. Early on, they are not yet that powerful, and the first couple of bosses have quite a substantial amount of arcane resistance. Be that as it may, does it even inflict arcane damage to begin with? Because the item description says that it summons spirits that smear your enemies in blood. Heck, it even knocks dogs away like blood attacks do. But gotta wipe my hands clean of this one, because it is in fact pure arcane damage. Although what is even stranger than the description is how you use the item in the first place. Because you don't wear it. You hold it in both hands and you then squeeze it. Well, that is one way to get the upper hand, I suppose. I think I might know what From Software was going for, but I can't really put my finger on it. Anyway, let's go and test the range. The power of glove, a force from above. Oh wow, the tracking and range is so much more accurate than from a gun. Hey! Hello? What the fuck, bro? Well, despite the power of glove being a force from above, frankly, this guy can fuck off to Hollywood, since that shot was below the belt. Yeah, never bring a gun to a well-gloved fist fight. And despite missing sometimes, the tracking still gets a thumbs up from me. Because it can also track back around after missing, which is especially noticeable on large targets. And in this particular case, there's even an extra set of blood bullets in this arena. You glove to see it. However, I did not glove to see the relatively low amount of damage I was doing, given the reputation of this hunter tool. Not to worry though, because since we have the benefit of range, we can essentially use a hands-off approach. Be that as it may, we do want to become so powerful that we get to the point that despite using a glove, we wouldn't even need to lift a finger. And we can in fact achieve that by raising our arcane stat at our favorite waifu. And as much as I would want to ask her hand in marriage, she is ironically the one kneeling down. And as painful as it might be to watch, given that we all regard the doll as a cutie, but in order to be theme appropriate, I just had to turn her into an ex-cutie. You know, because of executioner gloves. Okay, maybe that wasn't really worth it. Yeah, I bet I will get the waving finger of disapproval from all of you guys for that. And on top of that, asking someone's hand in marriage needs to be done to the father. Well, at least we have one here of the Gascoigne variety. And his arcane resistance is fortunately quite a bit lower. So we are getting a glimpse now into what this weapon is capable of. Not to mention that I can hit him right over the gravestones. Well, with mixed results, that is. But once again, the tracking is so extreme that it can even miss him altogether and then still hit him from behind. And as if it required even more benefits, it does an incredible amount of stun damage as well, being capable of breaking a lot of enemy attack animations. Well, I can definitely keep this glove on, because that was not exactly a nail-biting experience to begin with. In fact, I don't exactly know a lot about PvP in this game, but I do have a suspicion that it would be really good against other players, or in this case, against NPCs. And in case you might not have noticed it while getting shot at, but if you look very carefully, you can actually see Jura standing there next to the giant Gatling gun, all the way up that giant tower.
I'm so f***ing high right now!
However, let's see if we can bring him low. Whoa, he can even avoid the tracking of the raves. Fuck, then pretty soon I'll be raving like a madman. Okay, scrap that before things get out of hand. Let's simply come back to the issue of NPCs later on. Because obviously we cannot snap him out of existence Thanos style yet. But hey, the night is still young. And there is of course such a thing as beast blood pellets, which are called beast blood pellets because they let you do more damage. Unfortunately, that only applies to physical attacks. So we will be starved of beast blood, just like the blood-starved beast. However, she was evidently not that hungry for battle, because her pace is anything but hand over fist. But of course she will go into second gear as soon as her second phase starts. Of course, if she simply had started in second gear, she would have been fast enough to win a dragster race in 5.51 seconds. Be that as it may, we still have the reach advantage anyway. Although we can of course choose to get directly behind her to hand her her ass. All in all, she can fight tooth and claw against our glove, but she's not clawing her way back from this one. Unless you let her, but that is immaterial when using these leather gloves, although what would be more substantial would be to gain enough blood echoes to allow us to rule with an iron fist instead. So first of course some simp money by selling the doll clothes, and other than just raw power, more ammunition would be helpful to have on hand as well. Like by giving the eager to help church beggar a helping hand. And by getting our grubby hands on some lovely chess. But very much in contrast to those, we will need to handle the witches in order to make use of them. But before we actually get there, I am also quite an animal glover. And as you can see, if you take a soft-handed approach, even wild animals won't bite the hand that feeds them. Well, in the case of the witches, they probably don't even have any teeth left to begin with. But to be fair, in most playthroughs they don't have a lot of bite in them. However, this time around, I didn't even get the chance to worry about which witch is which witch, because I killed the second one so quickly that I was afraid I had to reset and come back crawling on hands and telekinesis, given that a telekinesis is a lethal attack at base health. But because of my based gloves, I had these toothless crows eating out of the palm of my hands, even more than the actual crow did beforehand. And thus, with the rune tool within my grasp, I could get myself ready for the quite arcane-resistant vicar of the Yharnam Church. The illusion of a saint who is actually merely a sinner among sinners. However, you need to only hate the sin and glove the sinner. So despite her high resistance and her far-reaching jump potential, we didn't even need to get our hands dirty against she who tends to fold them in prayer. In fact, I was rubbing mine together when I saw how easily I could fold her like a cheap lawn chair in order to return her from a place of ecclesiastical authority back into the fold. To the point that I felt almost guilty from having her blood on my hands. Regardless, let's use this vicar wash to cleanse our hands and innocence, although I'm already going to disappear into the depths of the Forbidden Forest anyway, without getting lost in the process, because I know this area as the back of my hand. However, something I was not able to understand is why I wasn't able to pet the doggos in the cage. For an animal glover like me, that is definitely one of my pet peeves. fuckalicious. I might as well use this gauntlet to hold my dick instead of a dog. I am still in a dream, snake feeler. Now, of course, another pet peeve of mine is that I prefer to wear a theme-appropriate attire. Which in this case, obviously has to be the Executioner set, which we can find in Canehurst, where our gloves originated from. Including being full of wrathful wraiths. And damn, those are Arcane resistant. I thought Arcane hurts them, but they only live there apparently. Quite ironic, by the way, that we are now wearing Executioner gauntlets while also holding and squeezing one. But as should be evident by now, you can in fact squeeze a lot of damage out of them. And that's a good thing because our attire is incomplete. So by turning Executioner Alfred into an Executioner, we can get our hands on the Golden Oreo or something like that. Weird name for a very comically conical helmet that canonically somehow allows the wearer to face impurity, staring it down with stern golden spirit. Yeah, sure. Perhaps you can see in the same way Metal Gear Solid Soldier would, because those also have conical vision. I would use my glove to violently facepalm, but then I would probably go deaf as well. Regardless, with this golden pyramid on my head, I have become as horrifying as a Silent Hill 2 character. Because compared to me, every other hunter in the game comes across as pretty limp-wristed. Wow. Make peace with a firm handshake. My fucking ass. NPC you later, I suppose. Even winter lanterns can't hold a candle to my winter mittens. In fact, I was downright smitten with these mittens. The moment I faced off against Amygdala, with very much the emphasis on the word moment, because I could count the mere seconds that this fight took on one hand. What the actual fuck? I knew that this hunter tool belonged to the upper tiers, but this is truly an uppercut above the rest. So you know, for that reason, I think we should have an early encounter with Parl. So let's head off into Hypogean. And at least there's actually a lantern close by. And, oh. I actually never noticed that. But there's like a small corpse with a tiny mantis cage on its head. Aww, a tiny cute little cagey. Yeah. Almost as adorable as Parl, who thought that he stood a ghost of a chance against my triple ghost onslaught. In all honesty, I didn't even know what I or he was doing at any point. But when using these gloves, taking a shot at the dark makes light work of this beast. And come to think of it, the gate behind him leads back into Old Yharnam. And I do have some unfinished business there. So let us see if Jura is still durable enough. Well, unfortunately for him, despite me leveling up my Arcane stat exclusively, the length of my health bar might stay the same, as the amount of HP stays the same, but my defenses do in fact go up. That is why you can survive so much more, even when leveling up other stats than your health, compared to not leveling up at all. And that is actually something that a lot of people don't even realize. What? Trembling in your boots? Trembling in your gloves I could accept, but no. A hunter must hunt. But don't worry, you are in safe hands with me. Oh, that is lame. He cannot take damage before transforming. Wow, now that is abhorrent, with the emphasis on whore. And, well, he drops the Beast Rune, which I have no use for, of course. Oh, wait. He drops 2 of them? Huh? So, I did kill the original version, perhaps? Because this looks rather glitchy. Well, 1 in each hand, dual-wielding Beast Runes. However, given that neither are useful, I don't know which one to pick. But hey, old beggars can't be choosers. Now, of course, against the shadows, you do have the choice between targets. But the annoying thing is that the targeting system can sometimes make that choice for you. Fortunately, because of the tracking, not even enemies that normally tend to dodge your projectiles will necessarily be able to dodge your projectiles. And since the attack is spammable, you can spam the first one down once they all grow snakes out of their heads. I guess it's a good thing that their faces are obscured, because I bet whatever is hidden underneath that hood is a face that only a mother could glove. Or a motherfucker like me, since that's how you fucked them up, Even though you cannot use the sidestep strategy on the candle shadow, obviously. Nor do you really need to, come to think of it. Something I did need to do is go back into the forest for some unfinished business. After all, there are some NPCs left. Yeah, of course, in hindsight, that's not even remotely necessary at all. But hey, Glove is blind, especially with this helmet. And I need to demonstrate that in the land of the blind, not even the one-eyed man is king. Although having said that, Walter does not falter as easily as the other NPCs. Regardless, in the end, he came, he used a saw, but he did not conquer. Perhaps he should have tried a seesaw instead to make up for his missing eyehole. However, a normally missing asshole will spawn after killing Walter, namely specifically one of the Madara twins. And for some reason I thought there were in fact two of them, I mean, they're twins. But I only see one of them, so maybe I'm just misremembering? But for those who do remember, this time, despite his enormous health pool, I did not need to trick him down the elevator, like I did over 4 years ago when I did the Madara's Whistle only challenge. So if you've never seen me take on the game with that particular hunter tool, you should go and check that one out as well after this one. In fact, I was whistling quite a different tune in that particular run, because unlike this one, that one actually was quite a challenge at times. On a side note, Master Willem's model does not contain any hands. He's essentially wearing his sleeves over them. Which on an even sider note, is what I used to do to keep my hands sort of warm during winter on my bicycle when I forgot to bring my gloves along. And on an even siderer note, with this particular hunter tool, you can actually inflict damage on the ROM with your very first attack. Because it's 3 projectiles after all. So the second and third one immediately do damage after aggroing her. Yeah, like Willem, we also have something hidden up our sleeves. And we didn't even need any tricks to avoid Rom's head, because her flailing around caused the projectiles to go underneath her head altogether. Normally you tend to have your hands full on Rom's spider companions, but this time that wasn't remotely as miserable. And even if it had been, Misery Gloves Company. Or better said, it can make a large company feel rather miserable rather quickly, and I definitely had a hand in that. In fact, I didn't even require any bicycles to fly these ETs to the moon, and even if I did, they wouldn't have sleeves to cover their hands with anyway. However, now we'll have an encounter with the boss who is hands down the greatest threat in the main game. The throat-based boss with a suffocating grip on your own throat. The left-behind Great One, the daughter of the cosmos herself. Responsible for an entire player base clawing their own eyeballs out of desperation and a vain attempt to gain insight into her dreaded charge attack that, I am still playing Bloodborne, right? You know, the game in which I've died 1,000 times before? Wow. Against the Daughter of the Cosmos, these gloves are out of this world. However, and an actual meaningful however this time, not to mention that for some reason the word however occurs way too frequently in my scripts anyway. However, that's not the point. But there is at least one encounter in which that easy to grasp victory slips through your fingers, even when using these overpowered gloves. Because the One Reborn has the highest arcane resistance in the entire game. Meaning that not only can't you keep the boss down on the ground by breaking its limbs, especially since you need time to create blood bullets, but it also implies that when the fight turns into a mess that even with our hands gloved up, still requires us to get them dirty to the point of getting fucked up when your valuable vials are drained away. Meaning that you can literally run out of shots altogether. Yes, against a skeletal mass like this, you will have to work your fingers to the bone. Unless, and let me just snap my fingers because I just got an idea, we don't actually need to play the hand that we've been dealt. We can simply choose to go to the DLC first. After all, it's not like there's anything to pick up or something along those lines. So the order of events doesn't even matter in that regard. Also, something you might not even know, for some reason the dialogue from the little Scalabro is unaffected by the volume settings of the game audio. So since I always have it low, it's more like he's announcing the coming of Loudwick instead.
Unsightly beast.
But it was also loud and clear to me that this hunter tool is so much more effective in this fight than the tiny Tonitrus from the previous video. Because unlike that one, which mysteriously misses all the time, as long as you're locked on at least, when you miss a shot with the gloves, you can just hand wave it away given that the projectiles will act like homing missiles. Which easily allowed me to get the upper hand in this fight. That is, until his arcane resistance goes up in the second phase. Although that wasn't even that big of a difference. But there was an issue that I did waste too many of my regular bullets in the first phase. After all, if you don't carefully time when you make blood bullets at base health against Ludwig, your end is near at hand. And the moment you start to panic, your approach will inevitably become quite ham-fisted. And let me emphasize that that's not the most satisfying way of holding meat in your hands.
Have you seen the light?
You think I can see anything like this? Pfft, what a conehead. And it requires gonads, under normal circumstances, to face off against human Amelia and the other NPC I actually don't even know the identity of. But if I manage to demonstrate the superiority of the gloves over the tiny Tonitrus against Ludwig, I will also need to demonstrate its superiority against the Black Sky Eye from the video before that. Which was in fact a great hunter tool if you saw that video, but as you can see right now, I am definitely not hanging up my gloves anytime soon. And speaking of time, usually when using arcane damage, the failure fight becomes filled with your frustration over how long it takes. But it wasn't actually all that bad this time. Although you do have to keep in mind that 4 enemies implies that you could get attacked from all sides. But hey, I think you can agree that we are strong, no one can tell us we're wrong, searching our hearts for so long, all of us knowing, glove is a battlefield. Well, normally using projectiles against Maria is a nightmare because she can dodge. However, other than the fact that this lady of the clock tower rang our bell before the fight even started, this was honestly probably one of the easiest Maria fights I've ever had. The tracking of my projectiles is way more dodgy than even she is, so if you ever happen to struggle with Maria, remember that all you need is glove. That is all you need. Heck, since you find them in the chest rather than buying them from the messengers, you don't need money, don't need a credit card. Heck, it's so easy that you don't even need to train. This attack is so strong that it's cruel sometimes. But hey, it might just save your life. And that is the power of glove. Interesting detail here, by the way. Maria is a vile blood, and the executioners are their sworn enemies. Regardless, that does not entail that a vile blood is the opposite of an executioner. You know what is the opposite of a vile blood? A blood vial. Now stop facepalming, this is exactly what you're here for. You glove this shit and you know it. Now something I've always wondered is who the father of the Orphan of Cause was supposed to be. Well, whoever the 2 glovebirds were, despite the fact that Orphan cannot purposefully dodge your attacks, he can sometimes just do it incidentally. And then not even the extreme tracking is extreme enough. Especially since he's such a small target. Not to mention that you don't actually have infinite range. And he might have more than you even realize. All in all, that might not sound like too much of an issue, but remember that Orphan has a very large health pool, and Arcane happens to be his highest resistance. At least one interesting thing is that you can actually attack him when he summons lightning, which you normally wouldn't do since he takes massively reduced damage when he does that, but because the projectiles are so slow, they will tend to hit him after he comes out of that animation. But despite of that, there is a real danger of running out of shots before being able to finish the fight. The gloves are still effective in the end, but not as much as you would have expected up to this point. So yeah, all in all, I have a bit of a glove-hate relationship with this fight under these circumstances. Which is the exact opposite of how I experienced the fight against Lawrence. Because other than the dreaded Superman jump, which he luckily didn't even do, but for the glove of God, does the first Vigor get to feel the angry hand of Providence despite his position. In fact, speaking of his position, when he goes prone, he is prone to getting a prostrate exam with this glove. And definitely with surgical precision. And of course, the added benefit is that now the DLC is done, we have nearly maxed out our Arcane stat. Which in turn implies that we no longer have to angrily shake our fist against the One Reborn. Although, annoyingly, the entrails don't have a lock-on point, requiring you to either get dangerously close, or you can try to free aim, or as we would say over here in my country, uit losse pols schieten. After all, if he tries to make you a goner, God let him. But still, it's all in all quite a mess. But in the end, even with these gloves, you can still jerk this giant boner around. But of course, the biggest jerk and the biggest dick, who appropriately is actually wearing the biggest cock cage of them all, if you never stop to take a closer look at his students. But although I normally always express my immense hatred for Mikkeles, this time I'm a glover, not a hater. So instead, I will express my undying glove to him this time. And I will always glove you. Will always glove you. Godverdomme. Kanker. Oké, dat moet ik niet doen. Godverdomme, man. Dan verneuk ik op de stem zo. Well, I guess it's not that bad that I fucked up my voice, because I quite literally have nothing to say about the wet nurse fight. Easiest fight I ever had, possibly. She can't dodge my attacks, even though she tries. She has no range attack other than a jump that you can easily avoid. So no way that you would ever get your ass handed to you under these circumstances. But speaking of handling asses, what I do want to point out is that False Josefka wears gloves, but no shoes or socks. Typical Miyazaki. Interesting little factoid, by the way. The Dutch word for glove is handschoen, which literally translates to handshoe. Well, at least it does make sense of the expression to fall head over heels in glove. But yes, over here we wear wood on our feet and shoes on our hands. Yeah, admittedly it's a weird country, but hey, I think we make up for it with illegal weed and prostitution. Be that as it may, with one boss left in the main game, for very good reason by the way, having the power of 99 Arcane is not going to make up for the fact that he gets a shield around him in the second phase that deflects projectiles. Even though he uses essentially the same projectiles as me, and he's not even wearing any gloves, despite the immense cold. Heck, his sleeves are not even long enough. But the thing is that either getting lucky enough to hit him enough times despite of his shield, or get lucky enough like in my previous videos, where I got the parry glitch that removes the shield altogether, but that's simply something I cannot rely on. And so, what the hell? Holy fuck, he skipped his phase transition altogether, meaning that he never got a shield in the first place. Wow, that's like getting the luckiest poker hand ever. So, best not to waste this opportunity, because given how rare it is, I think you can understand the gravity of this situation. Alright, when it comes to gravity, the gloves are off now. Fuckalicious, how the hell did that even happen? I was handed the perfect opportunity and I still managed to waste it. Now, the thing is that you can still hit him even with his shield because, ironically, it wasn't that well executed by FromSoft, since it doesn't follow his character around perfectly. But still, you will need a strong hand on the tiller to slip the projectiles through at the right moment. Ah, damn it, he is being quite a handful. So I really wish I hadn't wasted that, what the fuck? It happened again? I don't know what it is, but maybe, possibly, it's the stagger potential of the gloves, stunning him out of his phase transition animation, or something along those lines? Well, at least this time, when the opportunity was handed to me on a silver platter, for a second time, I did make sure to grasp the victory out of his very cold and very dead hands. must be the reason why I'm queen of the castle. Well, I would have been if the actual queen hadn't been quite literally immortal. But despite God himself apparently holding a hand over her head, we did manage to make it to the end of the game. But I am left with one question. However, not about this playthrough, but about one I did all the way back in 2021. Why the hell did I not use the Executioner Gloves against Gurman in my no stamina challenge? Because I suffered as a grand motherfucker against Grandpa over here back in that playthrough. And in hindsight, I really shouldn't have. Because ironically, arthritis would be worse for me in this case than for him. And thus, what can we conclude about this hunter tool? Well, if you've never tried them, you should definitely get your hands on it. Because despite its strange appearance and attack animation, the juice is very much worth the squeeze. It might have been an unusual idea to hold a glove up in your hands, but the idea was at least very well executed. And a clear demonstration of that age-old adage that glove conquers all.